Hello, everybody. How you doing? Thanks for tuning in today. Welcome to everybody. For those individuals out there that do videos and shows, you're not a stranger to the email and questions that you receive time to time in regards to your videos and things like that. And I haven't done this in the past. This is something new, but I'm going to do a little bit sort of an educational video here. I believe it's important for every American patriot out there. I believe this is an important video. There's a lot of patriots out there that don't know the history of this country and why things are the way they are. But what I'm specifically focused on today is this flag right here. As it's well known, it's called the Don't Tread on Me flag, also known as the Gadsden Flag. A very, very rich history, almost up to the level of the United States flag. Some people know this flag by the, don't tread on me as listed on it, while others think the meaning is, leave me alone, or I'm going to attack you, don't tread on me, don't mess around with me or I'll come after you. And even though all of these meanings are partially correct, it's much, much, much bigger than that, even going back all the way to the founding of this country that we live in. I don't know how it happened. I'm not about to go into the mind of the media, our current politicians in office, but this flag here, now I'm not talking about the Confederate flag, whether you believe it or not. I guess some people out there, I can kind of figure out why they may see that flag as a form of racism or hate or whatever, but this video is not about this. This is specifically about the Don't Tread on Me flag. But I've heard it many, many times. It's become a symbol of hate, terrorism. It's a flag flown by rednecks, and it means racist remarks. And like I said, I don't have any clue where that even comes from. That could be the farthest thing from the truth. Little do people know, this flag was actually the symbol of all of America and our colonies at one time. And, our media out there and even our politicians that people elect and put into positions of leadership really need to go back to elementary school and or college and learn their history. So not to bore anybody with long history lessons, for we all know we hate history, I got to fill you in on some blanks here. So we have to go all the way back to the fall of 1775. The British were here. They were occupying Boston, most of the entire city, and the Continental Army, which was newly formed, was all holed up in Cambridge. They were extremely short on arms and ammunition, and we know from history at the Battle of Bunker Hill, Washington's troops had been so low on gunpowder that they were ordered not to fire until you see the whites of their eyes, which we all know that was a quote from William Prescott back in the time. But anyways, sometime later in October, a merchant ship called the Black Prince was returning back to Philadelphia from a voyage to England. On board were private letters specifically addressed to the Second Continental Congress, and contained in those letters was information that the British government was sending an entire 2 ships filled with nothing but arms and gunpowder for the British troops. Well, General Washington at the time, he was going to have none of that. He needed those arms instead of the British. So he got with Congress and they came out with a plan to go out and capture those British cargo ships. At that time, they authorized the creation of the Continental Navy, which only started with 4 ships. The frigate that carried that information from England, which was called the Black Prince, was one of the 4. It was purchased, it was converted to a very powerful man of war, and they renamed that ship to the Alfred. So to accompany the Navy on their first mission, Congress also authorized the mustering of 5 companies of Marines. The Alfred and its sailors and Marines went on to achieve some of the most notable victories of the entire American Revolutionary War. However, I don't want to get too far off topic here. What's particularly interesting for us that some of the Marines that enlisted that month in Philadelphia were carrying drums painted with a big yellow background emblazoned with a fierce rattlesnake coiled, and it looked like it was ready to strike. It had 13 rattles, and it had right in big black letters on the bottom, "Don't tread on me." And the best way to sum this up, at that time, Benjamin Franklin, who everybody's aware of, back in 1775, wrote an actual letter to the Pennsylvania Journal, and I quote, "I observed on one of the drums belonging to the Marines now raising, there was painted a rattlesnake with this modest motto under it, 'Don't tread on me.' As I know it is the custom to have some device on the arms of every country, I supposed this may have been intended for the arms of America." He goes on to say, "The rattlesnake is found in absolutely no other quarter of the world besides America. In addition, the rattlesnake also has very sharp eyes and may therefore be esteemed of an emblem of vigilance. She never begins an attack, nor, when once engaged, even surrenders. She is therefore an emblem of magnanimity and true courage. She never wounds till she has generously given notice, even to her enemy, and cautioned him against the danger of treading on her." He goes on to say, "I confess I was wholly at a loss what to make of the rattles, until I went back and counted them and found them just 13, exactly the number of the colonies united in America. And I recollected too that this was the only part of the snake which increased in numbers. 'Tis curious and amazing to observe how distinct and independent of each other the rattles of this animal are, and yet how firmly they are united together, so as to never be separated but by breaking them to pieces. One of those rattles singly is incapable of producing sound, but the ringing of 13 rattles together is sufficient to alarm the boldest man living." And of course, like I said earlier, Benjamin Franklin wrote that letter to the Pennsylvania Journal in December of 1775. So getting back to the story, the British ships that came over, they ended up getting one and called this ship the Alfred. Now, there was a very important American patriot around at that time. His name was Christopher Gadsden. He actually led the Sons of Liberty in South Carolina starting in 1765, and he was actually made a colonel in the Continental Army. In 1775, he was in Philadelphia representing his home state in the Continental Congress. He was also one of only 3 members of the Marine Committee who decided to outfit and man the Alfred and all of the other ships. So at this time, Gadsden and Congress got together and they chose a man, his name was Essex Hopkins, as the commander-in-chief of the entire Navy. The flag that Hopkins used as his personal standard on the Alfred is the one you would now recognize as the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. And believe it or not, the first lieutenant on the Alfred at the time was a man called John Paul Jones. And I'm sure many of you have heard that name. Most likely, he was the first person to ever run it up the mast of the ship. Now, some of you may have heard this flag called the Hopkins flag because, you know, it was presented to him by Christopher Gadsden. However, it is Christopher Gadsden's flag. He felt it was especially important for the Commodore on that ship to have a distinctive personal standard. And he also presented a copy of this flag to a state legislation in Charleston. And this is recorded as of this day in the South Carolina Congressional Journals. Colonel Gadsden presented to the Congress an elegant standard, such as is to be used by the Commander-in-Chief of the American Navy, being a yellow field with a lively representation of a rattlesnake in the middle in the attitude of going to strike, and these words underneath, "Don't tread on me." So after this flag was flown on the Alfred, it started popping up across all the colonies at that time. We could find it on coins, on money. It was printed in banners. It was printed in newspapers and seemed to be popping up everyone and everywhere. The snake symbol with the yellow background was widely used with the Marines and the Navy at the time. And it stood for a time of unity, bravery, justice, and peace. That was back in 1775. And you got to sometimes wonder where this flag got a bad rep. It was because of this flag. It was there during the formation of the original 13 colonies. It was one of the most important pieces during the Revolutionary War. It flew on the Continental Congress on their ships. It was part of the American Navy at the time, up on their masts rather. And it just goes to show how much hatred goes on in this country over flags such as this. I don't know if it's a form of ignorance and lack of education from our current journalists and politicians. I don't know if it's a way to twist the nation around and get one side hating the other side, but this flag was never a form of racism. It was never a form of hatred. It was never a flag of division. And I have not done the research, but I don't really know where that skewed. I just hope one day that it doesn't happen to this flag one day, where people start calling this a symbol of hate. Because both of these flags pretty much flew at the same time. They were both there at the beginning of this nation. They were both there at the beginning of this country when we were fighting the British way back in the Revolutionary War. And somewhere along the line, it's skewed. So, like I said, watch out there. Listen to people who preach the wrong words, people who don't know their history. But like I said, and mark my words, watch it start happening to this flag sooner or later. But anyways, I appreciate everybody watching here. You know, it's an interesting history lesson for those who want to go back and look at the days of John Paul Jones and, you know, Gadsden and Hopkins and Benjamin Franklin at that time. And you'll get to see these pictures. But again, if you haven't done so, please like and subscribe the video. I appreciate everybody watching here, and I'll catch y'all later. You'll have a good one.